Hey guys, this is Midge from ICG. Great to have you watching the video. Thanks for your support. Last night was Tabletop Warfare's very first direct challenge FNM event, seeing as we can't currently play in store, and I think it went over very, very well. By all accounts, everyone in the chat on Discord really enjoyed it. Last night I was playing a deck that I've played a couple of versions of over the last 18 or so months. But I didn't get to play everybody, and I was discussing it with a couple of people afterwards, and I thought I might just do a quick deck tech, do an overview of the deck, and discuss some of the more interesting points on it. So the deck in question is EsperHero. Um, Hero of Precinct 1 is a card I loved since the second I saw it spoiled, and I've played numerous decks with it. In past standards, uh, the cards haven't been available to make it consistently competitive, whereas I feel now, looking at what is available, we can make it consistently competitive, and we can also have an alternate win con, so that if the game plan falls apart, you have a chance to still come out on top in the game. And I think that was one of the biggest issues with Hero of Precinct 1 in any capacity 12 months ago, or even 6 months ago, is that the game plan relied wholly and solely on playing Hero, and if that fell apart, you're in Struggle Town, and the population was only you, and your opponent kind of ran you over. Now there's a couple of cards that I think make this much better. There's a couple of versions of this getting around online. This is tweaked a little bit for what I like and my playstyle. But by all means, if you see something in here that you think you would change, let me know, because I love the feedback. This is all about deck teching and making sure that the community's obviously still playing Magic together, still talking with each other, and at the end of the day, deck teching together, we all improve our skills. So, and that's what it's all about, all about becoming better Magic players. So just a quick overview of the deck to start with. We'll start with the main board. As you can see, namesake of the deck, Hero Precinct 1, we run that as a 4 of. The card is really good. It's cheap, it's a 2-2, it's got a nice body on it, and at the same time it nets you creatures when you play spells, and playing spells in this deck is not hard to do. We run early hand disruption with Thought Erasures. It is a fantastic card. Thought Erasure is, in my opinion, a staple in just about every blue-black deck that's out there at the moment, and if it's not, it should be. Tyrant Scorn for early removal, and that's early removal across multiple different decks, but especially when you come up against things like mono red aggro, when you come up against some of these green stompy variations, and decks that rely on ramping out to get to things like Euro or Hydroid Crisis. Tyrant Scorn's really good at keeping the tempo sort of swinging in your favour in that sense. You've got Deputy Detentions, Baby Tef, Kaya, Mortifies, Oath, Elite Guard Mage. So far it's all pretty standard. I mean, all the cards there are quite reasonable cards to be played. The card that I've been playing with, there's two cards in this deck that I saw spoiled when Theros spoiler season was live, and I wanted to play with both of them, and I didn't know how I was going to do that, and then I took some time off of playing Magic because of work, and I've come back and I think I found the way to play with them. So the first one is Atris. I'm a big fan of this card. He's actually got a nickname, and if anybody who plays in our group probably knows it, but this is Old Mate Strange Files, just because he does weird things, and sometimes it leads to a benefit for yourself. So Atris, obviously blue and black and 2. He is a 3/2 with Menace. That by itself is not too bad for 4. But then when you add his ability into it, I think he gets a lot better. There's been probably 3 times in the last 7 or 8 games that I've played with the deck where I've been able to win purely off of the fact that my opponent has split the piles, probably not terribly, but not ideally for them, and I've been able to gain advantage off of it. It's pure advantage. That is what it is. Um, the next card that I've been wanting to play with since it was released, and I've messed around with it a little bit in Esper Control and Azurus Control, and even a little bit in some sort of Bant list that didn't really have any sort of archetype. It was a mess. Is Dreamtrawler. Dreamtrawler is amazing. So you could probably see that, between the deck, the main win con is obviously Hero Precinct 1, and then drop a whole bunch of multicolour spells, net a whole bunch of 1/1 soldiers, and gain advantage through Tyrant Scorns and Thought Erasures and those sorts of things. The alternate win con is the Dream Trawler. Dream Trawler is one of those kinds of cards where if you've got enough cards up to protect it, to give it hexproof, then generally you're favoured to win that game if it resolves. You're not always going to win the game. I mean, mass board wipe does affect it, global effects do affect it, and you can't really do much about that unless you've got a veto in hand. But again, very, very good card, especially when you're playing against mono red. The sideboard is pretty standard, for what I would consider pretty standard after looking at the various decks in various metas around the world at the moment, especially on the arena metas. Double Noxious Grasp, double Dovin's Veto, D-Spark, which is amazing. D-Spark is fantastic when you come up against decks that are playing Croaxer and decks that are playing Euro. It's really, really good just to get out there and kill their creatures, or exile their creatures so they can't come back. And you get things like additional Tyrant Scorns, Narset when you're playing against decks that draw a lot of cards, more Oaths. Time Wipe is probably one of my favourite board wipes that's been printed in a while. And then a Heliod's Intervention, which I've got in there purely for the red decks and the early beatdown type decks. You can find sometimes with this particular deck, because you're generally having to, at least by turn 2, pain to have a land come in and tap with the shock land, that those decks start to run away with the game, and having a Heliod's after sideboard can sometimes really help just stabilise the board once you've started assembling your army. So the deck's pretty straightforward. It's been a blast to play. As for the land base, 4 Hallowed Fountains, Temple of Alignments, 4 Godless Shrines, a single Temple of Silence, 2 Temple of Deceits, 4 Watery Graves, and 2 Fabled Passages. Nothing really out of the ordinary there. I am running 2 Castle Lochwains, purely just so I can draw late game when I've just got mana. It's just a bit of a mana sink there, and being able to draw the additional card for Dream Trawler is always good. So, as far as the deck goes, they're the main game plans. Drop Hero, drop a bunch of multicolour spells, net advantage, win. Drop Dream Trawler, win. But there are some really interesting synergies that you see with the deck. And for some of the newer players that may not have been playing Standard for very long, or maybe Theros Standard is their first real Standard block, then I'll just dive in a little bit into some of the interactions that you've got. So we all know Baby Tef, 3 mana, 4 Loyalty Planeswalker, allows your opponents to only cast spells at any time they could cast a sorcery, which is fantastic for you. You can tick him up, make your spells as though they had flash, and you can also return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand, and you draw a card. So, Baby Tef is great when you remember that you can actually target your own creatures, artifacts, and enchantments with it. I've seen a few new players just target their opponents, and they've missed triggers. Well, not triggers, but they've missed interactions where they could have netted advantage for themselves. So last night in the Direct Challenge FNM series, I believe I was playing Travis, and I'm sure he can correct me if it wasn't him, maybe it was someone else. But my entire game plan for about 6 turns was drop Oath of Kaya, tick Teferi down, bounce the Oath of Kaya, play the Oath of Kaya, So I've dealt 6 damage, I've gained 6 life. And then protect Teferi, tick Teferi back up till he's up at 4, bounce the Oath, play the Oath. That was my entire game plan. We were both drawing pretty poorly at that time. I believe we were top decking, and it was really a matter of I needed to keep pressure on him and keep his life total down so he couldn't blow me out of the water and me not have a chance to come back from it. And so that was one of the ways that I did it. I think that's a really good interaction to remember for newer players. I expect most seasoned players and people that have been playing for a long time would pick that up quite easily, but I thought it's worth mentioning that you could do that. The other one that I've won 2 games with today while playing is the Teferi Dream Trawler Time Wipe interaction. So basically, you can have Teferi on the board. You can tick Teferi up the turn before. You can swing with your Dream Trawler. It gets its +1 because it's attacked. You've drawn your card, and then you can flash in your Time Wipe. There's been a couple of times today where I've done that. I've had game 2, dumped my Time Wipes into board because I'm playing against mono red particularly. It comes in handy. And I believe I've even done this to Bo from Tabletop Warfare with another deck when we were playing on Arena. But basically, Teferi on board, tick Teferi up so that I can cast sorceries, obviously at instant speed, swing with my Dream Trawler, and then away we go. Bounce it back, wipe their board, drop the Dream Trawler. And generally, if you can do this when your opponent's got 1 or 2 cards in hand, you're pretty well favoured to come out well in front at that case or at that point in time. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. So as far as things that I would think about changing with the deck, I've noticed a couple of times that I haven't really wanted to play the Atris on turn 4. Now, that's not to say that the card's not needed in the deck and it doesn't do anything. I think the card's very good for the deck, but I think maybe I need to drop it down to a 2 of, and perhaps put the 3rd in sideboard. As for what I'd bring in over that, then I've seen a lot of mono red at the moment, and I've seen a lot of decks where your opponent's dropping 2 Crassuses or something to that effect. So I'm thinking maybe a 3rd Deputy Detention is required, and if not a 3rd Deputy of Detention, then maybe I'll put in a 2nd Mortify and go from there. But we'll wait and see. Time will tell. I'll play it a little bit more this weekend. I might even do an actual stream with it tomorrow. I'm meant to be streaming tomorrow at 7:30, so we'll see. And if I don't stream with it tomorrow, it might end up being a stipulation draft. So by all means, jump online, join the chat, join the channel, send me a follow. If you like this deck tech, by all means, follow me on my socials. Isolation Chamber Gaming. I'll put a link to all the different socials below this once I've uploaded it. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know if you want to see any further content, more deck techs on other decks, or even if you want to see a couple of games from this. And don't forget, send me your deck list. I'll build it and I'll stream it, and we can deck tech it live with everybody else. Thanks for watching. Take care. Speak to you soon. Cheers.